abuse, harassment, intimidation. These are just some of the complaints many employees have lodged against Nintendo while working for their Russian division. But if you really want to know how deep this crazy rabbit hole goes, then make sure you stick around to the end, as this needs to be heard to be believed. In recent years, video game companies have not had exactly the greatest of reputations regarding how they treat their staff, even in the most progressive nations. But that is nothing compared to some of the reported allegations from people who have had the misfortune of working for Nintendo in Russia. Once you get over the shock that there is indeed a Nintendo of Russia, it probably would not surprise you that many claim this isn't a nice place to work. But what exactly is it about this place that has earned it such a notorious reputation? Well, a lot of this simply comes down to the actions of one man, a tyrannical person who is said to control Nintendo of Russia with both an iron fist and a somewhat foul mouth. No matter what allegations have been raised against him, including physical evidence of him humiliating and abusing staff on live streams, Nintendo has continued to work with this man who, according to those he has worked with, would bully his own employees for things as simple as finding out that they were into, wait for it, Nintendo games. What? As ridiculous as all of this sounds, this is just scratching the surface of the negativity documented online that surrounds this man. So, with all that said, I am Lady Decade, and this is the story of Yasha Haddaji and the corrupt world of Nintendo of Russia. When discussing the history of Nintendo in Russia in the West, we tend to fixate on a simpler time when Nintendo didn't even have an official presence in the region. I am, of course, referring to the era of bootlegs and famiclones, a period in which brands such as Dendy rose to prominence, bringing dubious classics such as Samari to Russian homes everywhere. While certainly being considered one of the flag-bearing nations of bootlegs, an area of gaming history which is less well-trodden is when Nintendo officially entered the Russian market in 2012. The larger gaming world paid little attention to this new development when this happened, but after a few years in operation, pockets of the internet would be disgusted with some of the information coming to light from people who worked for or alongside this rather rogue branch of the company. First indications that all was not well for gamers in Russia would be presented by black and white evidence, which could be witnessed in an officially Nintendo-endorsed live stream broadcast to promote Mario Kart 8. As you can see from the following footage, this stream was an absolutely mortifying shambles, but not just because of the huge amount of technical issues, but also how the Nintendo of Russia CEO responded to these problems. This whole thing is beyond mental. At first, the Russian leader sent over one of his underlings to publicly chastise the two poor streamers whilst live on air, before shortly after frog marching over into the stream so that he could read them the riot act himself. It is darkly amusing that he appears angry because he doesn't believe the stream is even live, despite the streamers telling him on camera multiple times that they were indeed broadcasting. As you can probably see from the video evidence, his reasoning was that he had not received a notification indicating the stream was on. This is because the Russian social media website known as VK, in which Nintendo was broadcasting, doesn't send blanket notifications to all followers, much like Twitch and YouTube, as you're probably aware. Coincidentally, he was included in the people who did not receive a notification, and as he seemingly doesn't understand social media, took this as meaning that everyone was lying to him that the broadcast was even on. Therefore, he stands in full view of the camera, making an utter fool of himself, dropping some colourful language, including referring to everyone around him as retards, as well as saying both f*** and shit a lot. Much in the style of Vince McMahon, according to the audio, he starts stomping around, threatening to withhold everyone's pay and even fire everyone. But don't worry too much, the streamer on the right at least seems to be aware of how deep a hole it looks like Yasha has just dug himself into, illustrated by this rather unforgettable thug life moment. Now, considering how fast news spreads on the internet, this would likely spell doom for old Yasha. But while this incident was well known in Russian gaming, the controversy would not make it far enough for Western gamers to even find out this happened. It would be easy to speculate that some cover-up was happening here, but I doubt that was the case. In reality, I think this provides evidence that the World Wide Web is not always as worldly as it seems, with many different languages and cultures tending to stick to their own self-engineered parts of the internet. For example, I don't get to interact with Chinese gamers online as they're not allowed to use YouTube or Twitter, but that doesn't mean that they don't have their own social media echo chambers. In all honesty, until making this video, I had never heard of VK Social, and I doubt most of you in the audience have heard of it either, so I'm not surprised this didn't make it to the regular Western internet. Honestly, everyone, just stick with me on this one, because this story just gets worse and worse and worse. Before the Western world witnessed this embarrassing turn of events, a Russian gaming website known as Konobu.ru would go to great lengths to try and make English speakers aware of the Russian Nintendo CEO's existence and antics, even going as far as to publish an article in full English on their Russian site, filled to the brim with first-hand accounts from people who had negative dealings with this man. It appears that after the initial Nintendo livestream from November 2017, which features Yasha throwing a wobbly, Russian Nintendo fans mounted a petition for Yasha's removal. People who Konobu spoke to about Yasha included Dmitry Steblev, the very target of much of Mr. Haddaji's swearing in the livestream. He stated, "We started getting ready only 2 weeks before the event. It went all wrong. We had 1 day for testing and staging, and then level up was upon us. And Yasha really blew his gasket. He was responsible for the situation, and he was the one getting mad about it. Everyone had taken their licks. As for myself, he grabbed me by the badge on my neck and yanked me towards himself right in front of the main stage. He called me an idiot and said he won't pay me anything." He also disclosed that calling staff members retards and swearing in English, Russian and French was normal behaviour for the Nintendo CEO, stating he had seen it before. He mentions that, "A couple of times I was at the office, and in each case he was, so to speak, uncouth while addressing his subordinates. While I was there, he stepped out into the hallway and asked, 'Where the F word is she?' The F word flies off his tongue in every other sentence. He also constantly threatens to fire people, saying, 'I pay your salary.' I also know he broke one female worker down to tears and cracked jokes about some employees' BMI, and then told everybody that nothing had happened." The article states that Steblev believes such a person shouldn't be Nintendo Russia's CEO, commenting he thinks Yasha could go further. In the future, he could actually lay his hands on somebody. He doesn't keep himself in check at all. I don't think that some sort of anger management class can help him. He tries to control everything, including things he doesn't have a clue about. But any kind of a stressful situation throws him into a fit of rage. Aside from having apparent anger management issues, according to Steblev's account, it seems that Yasha also has a nasty and vindictive side to him that goes way beyond the boundaries of simply controlling his work environment, demonstrating psychopathic tendencies to harm others who he has previously worked with. Steblev states, "I heard that he calls up the companies looking to hire people who have been fired by him. I hope it doesn't happen every single time. I know he did tell my employer some bad stuff about me. I was told so." I know I'm not from Russia, so I have no idea what professionalism looks like compared to what is deemed acceptable within the UK. However, that seems so unbelievably unprofessional that I must keep reminding myself that this is a Nintendo boss, not some two-bob outfit operating illegally in a third world country. In addition, the following account provided to Konobu is even more shocking, showing even more alleged inappropriate behaviour. Konobu doesn't just stop with Steblev in this damning expose. They also managed to have quite a conversation with Miroslava Baznak, who used to work as the social media manager for Nintendo of Russia. There is so much to the conversation that I highly recommend reading it yourself after this. Miroslava was quoted as saying, "During my initial interview, Yasha was gruff but tried to pass himself off as a more or less impartial boss, but I can say that while perusing my CV, he told me that I had worked for crappy companies. He used to constantly bring me into his office for face-to-face meetings. He also pried into my personal circumstances, asked who I was cohabiting with, and how I made my living while searching for a job." Some say our wages are above the market, but I don't think so. It's the regular salary, but people who actually love the games do get less money. They don't like fans in Nintendo Russia. When you tell anyone that you're a gamer, they look at you strangely. Kenobu at this point advises they were able to corroborate this information through an anonymous source. If that is indeed true, that is horrendous and incredibly questionable at so many levels. So the fact that they have verified this is fascinating. But considering they chose to remain anonymous, this further suggests that people fear this man. But if you think that's bad, wait until you hear this. When asked about whether Yasha's leadership is effective and whether the ends justify the means, Miroslava explains the following, which in a way is just as funny as it is terrifying. The leadership is highly ineffective. He bottlenecked all processes through himself and he micromanages everything. He doesn't let anybody do anything. He wouldn't even let me publish social media posts from Nintendo of Europe until after he'd gone over them personally. He thought that they also were idiots. He used to say that the European branch is staffed by effing R-words. At this point, Kenobu starts to ask some even heavier questions. They asked Miroslava whether she knew of any sexual harassment surrounding Yasha at Nintendo of Russia. Miroslava answered, "Not with me. I didn't work there all that long, but he did approach me very closely during our conversations and touched my shoulders and arms. It's strange, but not strictly speaking harassment, but other girls did complain about that." Kenobu would then ask whether there were any positives at all with working with Yasha, but I bet they were not expecting this answer. In an unbelievable twist, Miroslava answered, "Friday mornings, Yasha made breakfast, toast and pancakes. Yasha sat next to you saying, 'Eat more if you like the stuff. What's the matter? Do you like it or not?' There was also a rule that breakfast should be attended at 8:30. What? I'd asked Miroslava if she was joking, but evidently not. I mean, how psycho does that sound? In other circumstances, I'd say that a company CEO making his whole company breakfast on a Friday morning sounded like a proper nice thing to do, but the way Miroslava explains the situation makes it actually sound like a harrowing ordeal. The thing is though, Yasha isn't just the boss of the company. Miroslava revealed that he's HR, he does the heavy lifting and the SMM. He's also director of marketing and the janitor and legal and the cook. It's all Yasha. So he's not just apparently and allegedly a micromanaging CEO, toucher of women's shoulders and part-time dinner lady, but he's also the cleaner and the whole legal department. It makes me wonder whether Nintendo hired him because he's such a jack of all trades and covers so many roles that they've been able to save on more than just fanboy salaries. However, you would also think that the squeaky clean and highly corporate Nintendo would want to pack Yasha Haddaji into a cannon and launch him into space rather than have someone like that associated with their brand. However, despite the livestream debacle in late July of 2017, it wouldn't be until around November 2018 that the West would finally cotton on to the story. On the 14th of November 2018, a petition was started on change.org by an anonymous user. It outlined in the petition how Yasha was the main enemy of Nintendo in Russia and had cancelled a Pokemon trading card game tournament and prevented the release of Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, before going on to briefly explain the alleged toxic working conditions under Yasha and finally outlining about the fateful stream. Eurogamer picked up on the story the following day, noting that the petition was at approximately 1,000 signatures at the time of writing. When I researched this, it reached over 7,500 signatures before running out of steam and falling short of the goal of 10,000. Oh, I feel a bit disappointed about that, but maybe there was just too many things going on in Mother Russia for people to give a hoot about a corrupt Nintendo boss. Like, I don't know, corrupt police, or political opponents being thrown in prison. The following week, on the 21st of November 2018, Eurogamer updated their story confirming that they had spoken to Nintendo, who stated, "We are aware of a video uploaded to YouTube recently in which Nintendo Russia's general manager Yasha Haddaji is seen losing his temper during an altercation with an external vendor in charge of a Mario Kart livestream. Mr. Haddaji's conduct and choice of words are most certainly not in line with our company values. We are also aware of further allegations that have appeared in the wake of this video and are now running a thorough investigation. We take these matters extremely seriously and will not comment further while we are running our investigation." But come on, get to the good bit. What did they decide to do with him? Well, not much really. In a statement issued from Nintendo of Europe to another publication, they would state, Nintendo initiated a thorough investigation into each of the allegations made by the General Manager of Nintendo Russia, Mr. Yasha Haddaji, in November. While the results of the investigation acknowledge that Mr. Haddaji's loss of temper on display in the video has at times also been observed in the office, none of the allegations of harassment brought forth in the wake of the video were substantiated by the investigation. Mr. Haddaji fully acknowledges that his conduct related to him losing his temper is a breach of our code of conduct, and expresses his remorse to all of those affected by it. He has received a formal warning and has issued an apology letter to all Nintendo Russia employees. Our top priority is to ensure a safe and supportive working environment for all employees. It's because of these values that we committed to a full and thorough investigation into each of the allegations against Mr. Haddaji. Going forward, Nintendo of Europe will be providing more resources to Nintendo Russia to support their efforts to bring Nintendo products and experiences to Russian players. We want to ensure that the conduct of all our employees is in line with Nintendo's company values, and we remain committed to upholding these standards in the future. Oh, sorry everyone.
We are deeply sorry. We're sorry. We're sorry.
Whether or not it can be proven that Yasha had done all of those horrible things to ex-staff members, including maliciously phoning up their new employers, trying to cost them their new jobs, humiliating employees for being fans of Nintendo, and calling Nintendo of Europe effing R-words or not, regardless, that livestream existed as proof of his character and how comfortable he was interacting with other people like that. There is no way that Yasha didn't act like that day to day, terrorizing everyone around him. That's without mentioning that Nintendo clearly knew about this and did nothing for potentially a whole year before being called out by Western journalists. It kind of breaks their family-friendly facade and shows what a cold corporate money-making machine they really are. So the stream's existence wasn't enough to get Yasha Haddaji the sack. This is despite the fact he is the precise opposite of how Nintendo typically presents itself as a brand. Good, squeaky clean and wholesome. By keeping him on, it serves as evidence that the reality is they do not have a consistent set of values, as they're operating with a completely different moral compass in Russia than the rest of Europe. So Yasha stayed with the company, seemingly getting off scot-free. So you're probably wondering what happened in his career for the last half a decade since then. By this point, it would be impossible not to be aware of Putin's special military operation, which would cause massive amounts of embargoes and sanctions against Russia. This would include Japan and, by proxy, Nintendo, who would no longer be able to operate in the country in an optimized capacity. Just 1 month after Russia invaded Ukraine, Nintendo had to stop product shipments to Russia due to what they referred to as logistics. Speaking to Eurogamer, they stated, "We have decided to suspend shipping all Nintendo products to Russia for the foreseeable future," a Nintendo spokesperson told Eurogamer. This is due to considerable volatility surrounding the logistics of shipping and distributing physical goods. In addition, Nintendo eShop in Russia is currently under maintenance following the suspension of transactions in Russian rubles by the payment provider. Surely Yasha's career would be in tatters with all this going on. If you're a long-time viewer of my channel, you'll know that sneaky Nintendo always find loopholes around trade sanctions, and they didn't sack Yasha either. So when you keep your slimiest employee and have sanctions to sneak around, you can bet your ass that between Nintendo and Haddaji, they would find a way to continue to milk those sweet rubles right out of the Russian gaming market one way or another. The first step in their conspiratorial workaround was to finally cease Yasha's official employment with the company. NintendoEverything.com would write, "There's been a lot of controversy surrounding Yasha Haddaji over the years, but now it's been confirmed that he's no longer the company's CEO in Russia. His contract ended on May 31. The next step would be form a side company known as Chivka, designed to circumvent the official sales ban in Russia. Currently, Yasha is in charge of the company, responsible for providing Nintendo customer support in the region. Given that Japan as a nation opposes the war in Ukraine, Ukraine, Nintendo won't give up an income stream that easily. So when questioned about this side company, Nintendo would respond that its purpose is to honor preceding commitments to our customers and ensure service continuity. Nintendo entered into a temporary cooperation with Haddaji's company LLC, Achivka, as its official supplier for repair and warranty for Nintendo products that had already been sold in the Russian market. But the reality is that Achivka has been importing Nintendo products to sell in Russia. Shortly before Yasha's formal release from Nintendo, Eurogamer reported that Achivka had been selling copies of Metroid Prime Remastered in the region. This was obviously way past the point of trade sanctions being placed on Russia by the rest of the world. We're still in the early days of Achivka's existence, so who knows if this company has indeed been created so that Nintendo can wrap up activities in the country, or if it's just a way to get around sanctions. Either way, there is no doubt in my mind that under the leadership of Yasha, Achivka is probably a really shit place to work.